Okay, so believe it or not, this is day 2 of the werewolf mold making process. I ended up working from like 10 a.m. to a little after midnight on the first 2 parts of the 3-part mold, and let's just say I was a little exhausted and tired of looking at it. So we're going to do this again. It's not as hot today, so we don't have the 3 freaking air conditioners going, trying to keep things cool. They were trying to keep the clay cool for the sculpture, so that it wasn't easily smeared and stuff like that. But the problem we were having was that the wet clay that we were using was drying out and starting to crack. So we were like fighting time, we were fighting heat, we were fighting evaporation. And today, let's hope it just goes a little smoother. We've got 1 part to make, and let's get going. We're going to go ahead from this point. We're going to have to flip the mold, so we're going to remove the wooden pieces. This is something you need to kind of be, pay really close attention to, because as you pull this out, you want to pull away. Sometimes you're going to need to wiggle the pieces out, but you want to pull away from the sculpture and not wiggle too much, because you may end up damaging the sculpture. Now we've gone through, and I wanted to make sure that all the wooden pieces were out of the way, and that I had a separate surface to put that on. So as I remove these final pieces, I'm going to go ahead and set this down on an alternate table so that I can transport it back onto the Lazy Susan there. Okay, we weren't able to videotape me flipping the piece, but we did have a separate surface set up so that we could set the piece on it and then clean off the Lazy Susan and then transport it over. And as you can see, we used the wooden blocks again to make sure everything was stable. As you can see, this is the cradle that we built. It's just going to go in the garbage. The good thing about this is the case line's already done for you. The plaster surface there is going to be your case line for the piece 3, and all you're going to do is put the wall on. As you can see, I've also put my logo on there. I usually wait to the very last moment to put that on so that it doesn't get damaged and crushed in the moving of the sculpture. Now I'm going to go ahead and set up the walls for the 3rd one. And after 2 days, it's extremely nice not to have to do anything else but put the walls up. All you're doing is crushing the clay against the plaster there, kind of creating a watertight seal, and extending that wall all the way around the sculpture so that this bigger piece, this back piece, will be encased. Don't forget, before your splash coat, don't forget to add your mold release, or else essentially you're going to lock this whole thing together. So mold release any plaster pieces that are going to be in contact with new plaster. And I'm spooning it on, not spooning it on, but painting it on like I have with all the others. I'm sure this is old news by now, but I am showing it for the sake of redundancy. We're gonna, go ahead and paint that in, get rid of the air bubbles. Pay close attention to where the case line meets the sculpture. So air bubbles have a tendency of getting trapped there, and that's the worst place where you want to have an issue, because on top of flashing, now you're going to have to do some repair work. We've started the burlap patches again. You can see that I'm laying them on and I'm kind of overlapping. I usually do 2 layers. You can do more. You don't really want the plaster mold to be extremely thick. Anywhere from an inch to an inch and a quarter is fine. When you start getting thicker, all you're doing is just adding weight. It's not really creating a stronger structure. So we're overlapping these pieces, and then we're going to go ahead and let that dry, and then add the thicker piece, sorry, the thicker mix to that. So, and work it with your fingers. Make sure you're working it in there so that you're getting any air bubbles that might be trapped between the last bandage and the new bandage. Okay, so that's dry, or that's cured. Make sure that when you're moving from step to step that you're allowing the cooling process to, I mean, when you notice when a mold has reached the heating point, that it's actually strengthening at that point. You don't want to start another, a layer until that has cooled. So, make sure that you checked it, that it's cooled, and you're able to move on to the next part. So we're putting on the thicker layer here. The idea here is to just put a locking layer for the burlap so that it locks it in between the first two. You'll have molds crack on you. There's nothing you can do about that, but that burlap will hold it together long enough for you to get a repair done. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and round off all these sides. You can see that it's dangerous. It can cut you. So you want to keep your hands away from it till you can hit it with the rasp and smoothing off those corners. Okay, so now I'm using the rasp to clean up some of these edges. They can get really sharp and you can easily cut your hand on it. So I'm just using this rasp here to round them off, make them safer to handle the mold. Okay, so I'm pointing out right here that I actually put these little grooves in the clay wall so that when I pour the plaster in, it would reveal these lines. These lines indicate to me that in between those lines is a pry bar mark. So there's a piece of clay there, and sometimes it can get hidden by the plaster. So rather than search for it, I've indicated where it is so I can put my pry bar in there, and as I put it in, it'll squish the clay out and I can actually start prying the mold apart. Okay, so now I'm going to locate my pry marks, and using the tool I'll go ahead and start removing the head casing from the rest of the mold. And this was the first piece that was supposed to be removed, so by removing this, the other ones will open freely. Leaving it attached makes everything kind of stay together. So as you can see, between the pry tools and a little bit of a creative wiggling, you're able to separate the piece, but watch your fingers. You can pinch them in there and it'll hurt like hell. I know this from experience. But everything just sort of pulls apart. I was actually really lucky. Everything on this particular mold went very smoothly. As you can see, the headpiece, and as you can also see, the sculpture is destroyed. Again, we're going to go ahead and separate the next two pieces, and when you're done, you should have something that looks a little bit like this. You've got your pieces laid out. Everything's good to go. All you got to do is clean them out a little bit and then fit them back together and let it dry out and prepare for your casting. Okay, all that's left now is a cheesy smile from the creator, and here you go. 3-piece mold. I hope this was helpful to you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to make comments. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.